Hi everyone, welcome to Must Read Monday. My name is Dabney. I'm the young adult librarian with the Twin Lakes Libraries, and I use they, them pronouns. So for this week's episode, I am going to be talking about hard-hitting books. These are books about difficult topics, books that, when I read them, they just had like a huge impact on me. They're books like I'll never forget. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I just read one last night. I literally read it basically in a sitting. I was up till 5 in the morning. I was like, oh my gosh, this book, I have to talk about it. And then it got me thinking about other similar books I've read over the years and ones that I usually don't share in these videos because they are, they're really intense. They're realistic, they're about real life issues, and they're about things that happen, unfortunately, to kids and teens, and they're uncomfortable to read, they're uncomfortable to talk about. People kind of, I think, like to think that, people aren't going through these things, but they are, or people who have gone through them might not feel comfortable talking about it with their peers because, their peers don't know how to relate or handle that. And so I just wanted to talk about these books because maybe, you have gone through something like this, or somebody you know has, or maybe you might meet someone later on in life who goes through something like this. And I feel like all of these books are really good about like encouraging empathy. Like, I'm reading these things and I haven't gone through anything like this, but it's helping me kind of learn, like, okay, this is what other people go through. What are ways to help? What are ways to talk to people who are going through these things? And so, yeah, they're hard-hitting, they're unforgettable, they'll stick with you. So, yeah, please, be sure to check for content warnings. And I feel like all of these are stuff that more, are like more older teen reads. I mean, obviously, if you're a teen watching this, your reading limits, so it's at your discretion. But just kind of, if I was like pulling this off the shelf to recommend, it'd probably be for some like older teen readers. Okay, so first off, the book I read last night, Darkroom Etiquette by Robin Roe, and it's a lot. Okay, so the main character is Sayers, and his family is like extremely wealthy. He's got a lot of privilege. The very beginning of the book, he gets pulled over for speeding. The cop sees who he is, like his name on the license, and it's just like, okay, you get a warning. Like, he gets away with everything. And because there's a lot of money and privilege, he doesn't really have any aspirations. He doesn't really try. He's just kind of coasting until he gets kidnapped and taken. And from there, so like you kind of meet him, and like there's other things that happen before he gets kidnapped, kind of revealing like, okay, this kid, honestly, not a nice guy, and some like pretty bad stuff happens with like bullying another student, which comes back later in the book. But so he gets kidnapped, and a lot of the book takes place while he's with his kidnapper. And it's very psychological, focusing on what all of this trauma and this experience is doing to his mind. Because, a lot of the book is when he's kidnapped, but then he does get home. And from there, it's more about, like, his recovery and, like, the lasting impacts of what happened to him and how everyone around him is dealing or not dealing with this. I thought it was very good, very well written. It will definitely keep you turning the pages. I could just spend the whole episode talking about this book, honestly, because I'm like, somebody just come listen to me emote right now. But then, I don't want to give spoilers away, but there's like a couple side, like, supporting characters whose stories also really got to me, especially this one guy, and I feel like what he went through was also really horrific and terrible, and also something like people were not comfortable hearing about or dealing with. So there's just a lot happening in this book, and I still keep thinking about it. I mean, I just read it last night, but I just find myself thinking about it and wondering, and because this is a big book, but it doesn't go on forever. So I'm still wondering, like, well, what about this or what about that? Or, I have a lot of unanswered questions. But yes, it's very good. And the author, also, the reason I was really excited to read that book, even though it's very dark and heavy, is this is the author's first book, A List of Cages, and it deals with some similar themes. And it's told from 2 points of view. Adam, who's a senior in high school, he's helping out in the school office, and Julian, who is younger and was his foster brother for a while, and now they reconnect, and he's starting to realize something's not right with Julian, something's going on, and he starts trying to help him and find out what's going on, and it's very, very intense. That's all I'm going to say about that. Another book, kind of really different, but that I just listened to, that also just was, I was listening to the audiobook and I just could not stop listening. I think I listened to 7 or 8 hours of it in one day because I was like, what is happening? It's All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. And oh my gosh, these, the 2 characters, so it's kind of set mostly in the present in Juniper, California, and it's following Noor and Salahuddin, or Sal, and then there's also some little, flashback chapters to Sal's mom, Misbah, when she was in Pakistan before she came to the United States. And okay, so Sal and Noor go through all the bad things, lots of really terrible things in this book, and I just kept listening because I was so worried about them, because one thing they're facing a lot of racism in their community and their schools, because they are both Noor is from Pakistan, Sal's parents are from Pakistan, and so a lot of people are racist towards them. There's Islamophobia as well, and there's some characters in here I was like, wow, you were the worst. You're the worst right now. And so they're facing that kind of on a daily basis. But on top of that, there's other issues they're facing, family illness, abuse, debt, alcoholism. It just keeps, and things just keep piling up, and you're just how, they're kind of both trapped in this town and trapped by their circumstances, and I just kept being what is going to happen to these kids? And a lot does happen. I will say, it ends, all of these books end in a positive way. So I'll just go ahead and, throw that out there in case you're, worried about reading them. But, yeah, it's amazing, and the audiobook is amazing as well. Going a little bit more quickly, The Mirror Season by Anna-Marie McLemore. This one has a bit of a magical fantasy element to it. It's very subtle, but the book revolves around these 2 characters, Ciela and Locke, who they were both sexually assaulted at a party, and Locke doesn't remember what happens, but Ciela does, and so he's a new student at her school, and she's trying to help him, but there's a lot of other stuff going on, and it's very good, and again, very heavy and intense, and oh my gosh, yeah. This is kind of like a completely different direction, but Devils Within by S.F. Henson. This one is about a boy, Nate, who grew up and was raised in like a white supremacist compound, and when he's 14, he kills his father like in self-defense to get away, and then is like sent like by the court system to live with his uncle, who he's like never met, doesn't know, and so he's just kind of like getting out of that world, learning like what the wider world is about, while also still dealing with like all of the trauma of like what he went through growing up, and like the continued like just like the lasting impacts of that, and also like the people who are like his father's followers are now after him. So yeah, like I said, different from the others, but still like really hard hitting, and one that I just kept reading and reading. Let's see, Jerkbait. This is one kind of similar because there is like a kidnapping element to this, but it's about two twin brothers who play hockey, and one of the brothers is gay, and so he this is not a spoiler, it's literally on the back of the book, but he tries to kill himself because he just can't imagine a future for himself, especially like, you know, wanting to be an NHL hockey player, and he just doesn't see a place for himself or a future. And yeah, and so his brother is now, like, they're being forced to share rooms so his brother can keep an eye on him, and he's kind of learning, like, he doesn't know who his brother is at all, and they are definitely going through it in this book. And then a couple more. Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe. Okay, so this one is definitely more like hopeful and sweeter, I guess, than some of these other books, because it does revolve around like the growing friendship and romance between Ari and Dante. But it's set in the 80s, and there's a lot going on with, like, you know, what it was like to be, you know, gay during the 80s, and to also be Mexican American, and especially like Ari has a lot going on with him, like within his family. His like older brother is basically in prison for the rest of his life, for like an assault that happened, and there's just, you know, and he's going through a lot, like with self-discovery, and I don't know, it's just like the characters are some of my favorites of all time, and the story was just beautiful, powerful, and it's always stuck with me. It's like one of those life-changing books for me. So kind of, like I said, more of like an uplifting story overall than kind of these others, which are pretty heavy. And then, another one that I will never forget, ever, Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany Jackson. This one we don't have in the collection. I think our copy got lost, but it's the main character, Claudia, her best friend Monday goes missing, and this story, man, oh gosh. And so she's like, she won't give up on trying to find her friend, and she keeps looking for answers about what happened to her. And there's definitely like a twist to this story that I never would have predicted. It is so sad. Oh my goodness. but also just, while these other books kind of focus on the person who is sort of going through these difficult situations, this one is more from like the perspective of a friend and somebody who doesn't know the full situation and is like finding out about things as you go along, and it kind of brings up those questions of like, what can you do like as a friend or a family member or whatever, to kind of like look out for other people. And yeah, it was a lot. Okay, and for one more, I'm sorry, I just keep talking about sad books, but like I said, they all really got to me. Afterward, this one we also don't have currently in the collection. We used to, but it was very good. And this one is about this is about two boys who are kidnapped, and I feel like there's another one I'm forgetting as well. But yeah, it's also very, very good. So Afterward. And then a couple I haven't read yet, but I want to read. Last night I sang To the Monster by Benjamin Alire Sáenz, so author of Aristotle and Dante. And then Tonight We Rule the World by Zach Smedley. And yeah, so those are, well, okay, I also have to shout out this one, sorry, but not sorry. The Foxhole Court, this is first book in All for the Game trilogy, which is one of like my favorite book series. It's self-published, but it's also kind of different from these others because the story is pretty far-fetched. But what's really stuck with me is all of these characters on, like, there's a fictional college sports team that the main character ends up playing for. And everyone on his team, like all of his teammates, are people who everyone has given up on. Like, they've all gone through like significant traumas. They all have very serious issues that they're dealing with, and they're just like, nobody's gonna give these kids like a chance. And their coach is like, no, like my team is gonna be all about giving people as many chances as they want, helping them as much as they can while playing a fictional sport in college. So the characters will stay with me for the rest of my life. Like, I've read this series a bunch, and it, like I said, it does have more of like a fantastic kind of like far-fetched story, and eventually like organized crime and the mafia get pulled in, and I definitely think these are for older teens as well. It's set in college, so like all the characters are in college, but it's also, one of my favorites, always gonna stay with me. So those are like my hard-hitting book recommendations, and I would just say don't go into them lightly. Kind of like have your expectations, do some research on content warnings, make sure like you're in a good place when you're reading these books, and if they get too intense for you or you're really struggling with the content, it's okay to put it down, to come back to it later, to talk about it with somebody. Or if you just are like, no, I can't handle this, then return it. You don't have to read it. But sometimes I feel like these are books that we need to read, or, we just want to read. And so those are my recommendations. So practice self-care while reading. And if you ever want to come into the library and talk about books, I'm always here. All right, bye, y'all.